Listen, sometimes life hits you with questions you never thought you'd ask. Questions that shake your confidence, your trust, your sense of worth. And one of the hardest questions a good man ever whispers to himself is, why did she cheat when all I ever tried to be was good to her? When a woman cheats, especially on a good man, his first instinct is almost always to blame himself. He begins searching for flaws he never had, questioning his character, his effort, his masculinity, wondering at what point he failed or what more he should have done. But the reality is that infidelity often has deeper psychological triggers that have nothing to do with the goodness, loyalty, or intention of the man involved. Good men tend to operate with a mindset of responsibility, believing that if something went wrong in the relationship, they must have fallen short. They assume they could have loved harder, listened better, or fought more strongly for the relationship. This self-blame doesn't come from weakness. It comes from a heart that genuinely tried to give its best. When a woman cheats, the good man starts to replay moments in his mind, every argument, every silence, every misunderstanding, and tries to connect dots that were never part of the same picture. He thinks, was I not enough? Was I too busy? Did I miss signs she needed more from me? But emotional betrayal rarely works in such a simple, linear way. Women are emotional processors. They internalize feelings, confusion, fears, and unmet needs differently. Sometimes, even when a man is doing everything he can, a woman may feel a disconnect inside herself that has nothing to do with his actions. The tragedy is that men often carry the weight of this disconnect as if it were their responsibility to heal. Good men also underestimate how much they invest emotionally. They may not express emotions in the same way, but when they commit with depth, loyalty, and full sincerity. So when betrayal happens, it hits them at the core of their identity. They don't see cheating as a moment of weakness. They see it as a statement about their worth. They question their ability to love, their ability to provide, even their ability to satisfy. But psychological triggers that drive someone to cheat often stem from internal patterns within the woman. Patterns shaped long before the relationship existed. A good man cannot fix wounds he did not create, nor can he prevent actions that come from unresolved emotions she never communicated. A woman may cheat because she seeks validation that has nothing to do with the man she's with. She may feel empty or unseen inside herself, even when the man standing beside her is giving her consistency, support, and kindness. Yet the good man interprets her actions as evidence that he lacks something. He doesn't realize that she might have been chasing something he could never provide, not because he was incapable, but because she didn't even understand what she was missing. A woman can be loved yet feel disconnected. She can receive loyalty yet crave emotional stimulation. She can have stability yet long for excitement that fills a void she doesn't know how to articulate. And a good man, unaware of her inner turmoil, believes her cheating reflects his value rather than her confusion. Men also tend to be problem solvers. When something breaks, they fix it. When something shifts, they stabilize it. But cheating isn't a problem he can fix, because the problem wasn't his behavior, it was her psychological landscape, her need for attention, her desire for emotional intensity, her unresolved trauma, her craving for novelty. None of these originate from his quality as a partner. But because men measure effort like currency, they assume more effort should equal more loyalty. When betrayal occurs despite his effort, he feels bankrupt emotionally, believing he miscalculated something he was never supposed to calculate. Then comes the quiet shame. Good men suffer in silence. They don't want to admit the betrayal because it makes them feel less powerful, less respected, less masculine. They hide their hurt behind responsibilities, work, or humor, pretending they're unaffected. But inside, they replay the moment they found out, trying to understand what they did wrong. This internal struggle leads many men to lose trust, not only in women but in themselves. They begin to question their ability to choose the right partner. They question whether kindness is weakness, whether loyalty is naive, whether vulnerability is a mistake. The wound becomes deeper because they never realize cheating is often rooted in the woman's unresolved emotional mechanisms, not in his shortcomings. A woman may cheat because she feels neglected emotionally, not because the man actually neglected her. She may cheat because she's addicted to attention, not because the man failed to appreciate her. She may cheat because she feels insecure and seeks external validation, not because the man didn't affirm her enough. She may cheat because she fears emotional intimacy, and sabotaging a good relationship feels safer than risking true vulnerability. Yet the good man interprets all of it as his failure. His compassion becomes his burden, and his loyalty becomes his guilt. Many men don't understand how powerful emotional voids can be. They assume that if they are present, caring, hardworking, and loyal, a woman will never look elsewhere. But psychology isn't built on logic. It's built on emotions, subconscious fears, childhood patterns, past heartbreaks, and hidden insecurities. A woman may cheat not because the relationship lacks something, but because she lacks something internally. And a good man carries the emotional weight of her decisions because he believes love should be enough to prevent betrayal. Yet love cannot cure emotional instability, insecurity, or unaddressed trauma. When a woman has internal conflicts she never expresses, those conflicts can slowly create distance, confusion, and emotional inconsistency. The good man senses the shift but doesn't understand the cause. He tries harder, loves stronger, gives more, unaware that the issue is not effort but emotional alignment. Meanwhile, she may seek comfort in someone who offers an illusion of emotional connection or excitement. It's not about the other man being better. It's about him temporarily filling a psychological gap she doesn't know how to manage. And so the good man takes the blame, not realizing the truth. He was never the cause of her betrayal. When women cheat, it is rarely driven by excitement, thrill, or impulsive desire. More often, it is tied to an emotional emptiness they feel inside, an emotional need that has gone unmet for too long. Women process connection, affection, and intimacy differently. They interpret emotional presence, attention, and engagement as signs of security, closeness, and value. So when these emotional needs feel ignored, forgotten, or misunderstood, even unintentionally, they begin to drift inward before they drift outward. A good man may think he's doing everything right, providing stability, loyalty, and effort, but a woman who feels unheard or emotionally disconnected may perceive the relationship through a completely different emotional lens. Women rarely cheat because they want something physical. They cheat because they want something they believe they are no longer receiving emotionally. This doesn't mean that men actually failed to provide it. It means she didn't feel it. Feelings shape reality for women. Emotional experiences build the foundation of how they interpret love. When a woman expresses her needs and feels dismissed, when she tries to talk but feels misunderstood, when she seeks closeness but senses distance, she internalizes the experience as emotional abandonment. Even if the man is trying his best, if she doesn't feel emotionally connected, she may start believing that the relationship is no longer fulfilling her on the level she desires. Often, women begin emotionally cheating long before any physical betrayal takes place. They may find themselves confiding in someone else, venting to someone who seems to listen more intently, laugh more easily, or respond with empathy. This emotional connection becomes a bridge, a doorway she steps through long before she realizes how far she's wandered. It's not that she intentionally sought it, she drifted toward it because something inside her was searching for understanding, validation, or emotional presence that she felt was missing. The tragedy is that the good man is entirely unaware of how deeply she needed that feeling. He may have thought his love was enough, that his presence was stable, his loyalty obvious, his actions clear. But women don't just want stability, they want emotional resonance, warmth, and consistent attentiveness. Many men misunderstand the emotional needs of women, believing that providing financially, protecting physically, or being dependable is the highest expression of love. Those things matter deeply, but for a woman, emotional intimacy is the heartbeat of the relationship. She wants to feel seen, heard, valued, and emotionally held. When these feelings begin to fade, she becomes vulnerable to someone who offers emotional connection, even if it's shallow, temporary, or manipulative. It's not the magnitude of the attention that draws her. It's the emotional sensation of being noticed. And this is where women differ from men psychologically. Men often cheat for physical reasons. Women cheat for emotional ones. The emotional void inside them becomes a space someone else fills. What makes this more complicated is that many women don't communicate the depth of their emotional dissatisfaction clearly. They may drop hints, make subtle comments, express frustration in indirect ways, or expect their partner to sense the shift. When their needs go unmet, they interpret it as emotional negligence, even if the man had no intention of neglecting them. Over time, this internal emotional gap grows. She begins to feel unseen, unappreciated, or emotionally lonely. This loneliness pushes her mind towards seeking connection. And when someone else provides even a fraction of what she craves emotionally, she may feel drawn in ways she never expected. Often the man she cheats with is not better. He's not stronger, richer, or more loyal. Instead, he offers emotional attention without the weight of responsibility. He listens with interest because he has nothing to lose. He compliments because he seeks opportunity. He responds with enthusiasm because he has no obligations. This illusion of emotional closeness can be intoxicating for a woman who feels emotionally disconnected in her primary relationship. It doesn't mean she loves the other man. It means she loves the way she feels when she talks to him. She loves the emotional sensation he gives her, not the person himself. The emotional high becomes a momentary escape from the emotional drought she feels at home. The psychological wiring of many women makes emotional validation feel like oxygen. When they don't get that oxygen consistently, they become emotionally suffocated. And when suffocation becomes unbearable, they search for air anywhere they can find it. This doesn't excuse their betrayal. It explains it. And that explanation doesn't place the blame on the good man. It simply highlights the emotional mechanisms that drive her actions. Women also internalize emotional experiences more deeply than men. A single moment of emotional neglect can linger in her mind. A forgotten compliment, a missed opportunity to listen, an argument where she felt unheard. These experiences don't just pass, they compound. Over time, these small wounds add up and reshape how she views the relationship. When another man steps in and treats her emotions softly, gently, or attentively, it creates a stark contrast. The comparison, though often unfair, becomes psychologically powerful. Another layer to this dynamic is emotional boredom. Women crave emotional stimulation, not in the form of drama, but in the form of engagement, warmth, and emotional presence. When the relationship becomes routine, predictable, or emotionally flat, even if stable, they may feel unseen within the comfort. They may miss the passion, the spark, the conversations that once made them feel alive. If they find that emotional spark elsewhere, even briefly, the temptation grows. Women are emotional storytellers. They build narratives in their minds about what they feel, what they lack, and what they deserve. If their story becomes one of emotional absence, they may begin rewriting it with someone else, someone who seems to fit the role of emotional provider. Not because he's better, but because in her mind, he represents what she feels she's missing. All of this leads to a painful truth. Women rarely cheat for physical reasons. The physical act is the final step, not the starting point. The starting point is emotional. It begins with feeling unnoticed. It builds with feeling unappreciated. It deepens with feeling disconnected. And by the time she crosses the line, she has already emotionally left in ways the man never saw coming. Emotional disconnect can affect a woman far more deeply than physical dissatisfaction ever will. For men, physical closeness is often the primary fuel for intimacy. But for women, emotional connection is the root system that keeps the entire relationship alive. When that root begins to dry out, even slightly, her heart feels the shift long before her mind even processes it. Emotional disconnect doesn't always happen loudly. Sometimes it begins quietly, in the small spaces between conversations, in the moments when she feels like she's talking but not being heard, in the subtle ways she begins to feel alone even while sharing the same room. It is this gradual emotional drift, not physical desire, that pushes many women toward choices they themselves cannot fully explain. A woman needs to feel emotionally bonded to feel secure, valued, and loved. If that bond weakens, she begins to interpret the entire relationship differently. She might still appreciate the man she's with. She may still find him physically attractive. She may still acknowledge his loyalty, his support, and his consistency. But if she no longer feels emotionally connected, she begins to experience a sense of loneliness that no amount of physical closeness can fix. And the tragedy is that many men assume physical affection can compensate for emotional distance, not understanding that for a woman, it often works the opposite. If she feels emotionally distant, physical intimacy may even feel hollow, forced, or disconnected. She begins to sense a gap between touch and meaning, and that gap becomes the emotional void through which temptation quietly walks. Women cheat far less for physical reasons and far more because they feel emotionally malnourished. When a woman feels emotionally disconnected, her mind becomes vulnerable to emotional influence from someone else. The other man becomes appealing not because of his appearance, but because of the emotional atmosphere he creates. Maybe he listens with more attention. Maybe he asks about her feelings. Maybe he shows curiosity about her inner world. Maybe he simply looks at her with the kind of awareness she hasn't felt in a long time. This emotional presence, even if brief or insincere, feels meaningful compared to the emotional flatness she senses at home. And so she begins to drift, not because she wants to betray her partner, but because her emotional needs feel unmet. Emotional disconnect grows in silence. It doesn't begin with arguments, it begins with lack of communication. It begins when a woman stops sharing her deepest thoughts because she feels they no longer matter. It begins when she stops talking about her day because she feels the conversation will be rushed. It begins when she suppresses her sadness, her stress, or her disappointments because she believes her partner won't understand or won't care enough to understand. Once she stops expressing herself, she begins to feel invisible. Feeling invisible is one of the most powerful psychological triggers for women. It makes them question their importance. It makes them yearn for emotional recognition. And when someone else offers even a small flicker of emotional attention, that flicker can feel like a flame. Men often don't realize how deeply women value emotional presence. It's not about grand gestures. It's about consistency. A woman wants to feel that her partner is emotionally available, emotionally aware, and emotionally engaged. When these feelings fade, she starts experiencing emotional isolation, even in a committed relationship. Emotional isolation is painful for women because they are wired to connect. They seek emotional safety, emotional intimacy, emotional continuity. When that safety weakens, they begin to wonder if the relationship is still alive or simply functioning out of habit. Another aspect of emotional disconnect is lack of vulnerability. When a man becomes emotionally closed off because of stress, fatigue, responsibilities, or personal struggles, he may unknowingly create distance. Women pick up on emotional energy quickly. If a man becomes withdrawn, distant, or less expressive, she doesn't simply interpret it as his mood. She feels it as a shift in the relationship. She begins to wonder if he still loves her the same way. She questions whether she still matters to him. And when unanswered questions pile up, the emotional distance becomes a quiet pain she carries alone. In these moments, someone else may step in, not necessarily with better qualities, but with better emotional timing. The other man may say the right words at the right moment. He may provide encouragement or empathy when she feels most vulnerable. He may simply show interest in thoughts she feels her partner no longer notices. That emotional alignment, even if temporary, creates a sense of connection she has been missing. And the connection feels intoxicating because it fills an emotional hole she's tried to ignore. Emotional disconnect also affects a woman's self-worth. When she feels emotionally distant, she begins to doubt her desirability, not physically, but emotionally. She wonders if she is still lovable in the way she wants to be loved. She begins to question whether she is a priority or an afterthought. When someone else steps in and makes her feel seen, admired, valued, or emotionally cherished, it replenishes something she has been starving for. That emotional replenishment becomes addictive, making it easier for her to justify actions she never imagined taking. Many men underestimate how emotional infidelity begins. It starts with conversations that feel meaningful. It starts with a sense of emotional closeness that feels refreshing. It starts with someone asking about her feelings when she hasn't been asked that question in a long time. Emotional connections grow quietly, and by the time she crosses the line physically, the emotional bond has already formed. She didn't cheat because she wanted physical satisfaction. She cheated because she felt emotionally alive with someone else. When emotional disconnect persists, the relationship becomes a routine rather than a connection. She may still care, still stay, still try, but inside she feels detached. She feels like she's losing herself. And when she feels lost, she looks for a place where she can feel found. Not because she desires another man, but because she desires an emotional experience she no longer feels. This is why emotional disconnect matters more than physical dissatisfaction. A woman can forgive physical flaws, imperfections, or shortcomings. She cannot forgive emotional absence. Physical closeness touches the body, but emotional closeness touches the spirit. When her spirit feels disconnected, the entire relationship begins to crumble from within. A woman who feels unappreciated or emotionally undervalued becomes vulnerable to the attention of someone who simply listens. Appreciation is one of the deepest emotional currencies for women. It's not just compliments or gestures, it's the feeling of being acknowledged, valued, and emotionally recognized for who she is and what she brings to the relationship. When that appreciation begins to fade, even unintentionally, she starts to feel emotionally disconnected from the man she loves. She doesn't necessarily want something new, she wants to feel important, relevant, and emotionally alive. But when she no longer feels that sense of appreciation, she becomes susceptible to someone who provides the emotional acknowledgement she's been missing. A good man often assumes that his loyalty, consistency, and presence are clear expressions of love. He believes that working hard, staying committed, and showing up daily should speak for itself. And while these actions are incredibly meaningful, women experience love through emotional language. They interpret appreciation through words, gestures, tone, and emotional attentiveness. When those emotional signs begin to fade, she doesn't interpret it as him being busy or stressed. She experiences it as emotional neglect. Over time, this creates an inner void. She starts feeling invisible, not because the man doesn't love her, but because she doesn't feel the emotional appreciation she once felt. Women thrive when they feel seen. They need to feel that their efforts, whether emotional, supportive, or nurturing, are valued. When a woman cooks, supports, encourages, listens, or sacrifices, she doesn't necessarily want praise, but she wants acknowledgement. If these contributions go unnoticed or taken for granted, she starts to feel unimportant. These small emotional disappointments accumulate quietly. They form layers of emotional frustration that she may not express openly, especially if she feels her partner won't understand or respond. When unexpressed frustration mixes with emotional loneliness, she becomes vulnerable to someone who notices her, appreciates her, and listens to her feelings. The dangerous part is that the person who listens to her may not even be intentionally trying to steal her heart. Sometimes it's innocent. A coworker, a friend, someone she casually interacts with, someone who pays attention at the right moment, someone who compliments her when she feels overlooked at home, someone who asks how she's doing when she feels emotionally dismissed, someone who makes her laugh after days of feeling undervalued. These small interactions create emotional contrast, and contrast becomes powerful. It makes the good man seem emotionally distant, even if he's doing his best in his own way. Women often cheat emotionally long before they cheat physically. The emotional connection begins when she starts feeling more appreciated by someone else than by the partner she committed to. It's not the person she's drawn to, it's the feeling he gives her, the feeling of being valued, seen, and emotionally recognized. When she receives appreciation from someone else, her emotional brain interprets it as attention, validation, and connection. And in that moment, she may feel emotionally alive in a way she hasn't felt in a long time. A woman who feels unappreciated at home may start comparing the emotional experiences without realizing it. She might think, why do I feel lighter when talking to this person? Or why do I feel more understood by someone who doesn't even know me deeply? These comparisons create emotional confusion. She begins to question whether her partner truly values her. She begins to wonder if she matters. And when emotional doubt grows, loyalty becomes vulnerable. Emotional vulnerability is one of the strongest predictors of infidelity. Not because she wants to betray her partner, but because she wants to escape the feeling of being emotionally overlooked. Appreciation is also tied to feminine energy. Women feel most connected when they feel admired, cherished, and emotionally nurtured. When that energy is missing, they experience emotional starvation. And when someone else comes along and makes them feel beautiful, valued, intelligent, or emotionally important, it awakens something inside them. The emotional high becomes addictive. She feels seen in a way she hasn't felt in months or years. She begins to crave that feeling even if she knows it's dangerous or destructive. Another layer to this dynamic is communication style. Many men express love through actions but not emotions. They work, they provide, they solve problems, they stay loyal, and they assume these efforts express appreciation. But women interpret love through emotional signals, eye contact, tone of voice, affection, thoughtful gestures, validating words. When these emotional expressions decline, she assumes the love is declining too. She doesn't see the effort behind the scenes. She feels the emotional absence in the present moment. And when she feels emotionally absent, someone who listens becomes emotionally attracted without even trying. When a woman doesn't feel appreciated, she also begins to lose appreciation for herself. Her self-worth becomes tied to how her partner treats her. If she feels ignored, she starts to question her own value. She begins to wonder if she's still desirable, still meaningful, still worthy of love. This inner insecurity makes her even more receptive to external validation. A simple compliment from another man suddenly feels deeply impactful because it fills the emotional void she carries daily. Women do not cheat because they're looking for a new relationship. They cheat because they're seeking emotional resonance. They want to feel important again. They want to feel chosen again. They want to feel appreciated again. And if the man in their life fails to provide this emotional presence, not intentionally but unknowingly, they become susceptible to the man who offers it, even briefly. This is not about the other man being better. It's about timing, emotional vulnerability, and unmet emotional needs. A woman cheats emotionally long before she cheats physically. And that emotional doorway opens the moment she stops feeling appreciated by the man she loves. Women don't cheat to replace their partner. They cheat to replace the feeling of emotional emptiness that has grown between them. Many women who cheat on good men are not driven by desire, thrill, or dissatisfaction with their partner, but by unresolved wounds, unhealed trauma, or inner insecurities that they themselves may not fully understand. These emotional scars, formed long before the relationship began, can influence how they connect, how they communicate, and how they respond when intimacy becomes too real or too vulnerable. A woman with unresolved trauma often carries emotional patterns that shape her behavior without her awareness. She may sabotage the very relationship that gives her stability because stability feels unfamiliar. She may push away the man who treats her well because being treated well feels uncomfortable. And she may cheat not because she wants someone else, but because she is running from the emotional closeness she doesn't know how to handle. Good men often cannot comprehend this dynamic because they approach relationships from a different psychological landscape. They believe kindness, loyalty, love, and consistency should strengthen the bond and reduce the risk of betrayal. But women who carry unprocessed emotional wounds may interpret kindness differently. It can overwhelm them. It can trigger fears of inadequacy or fears of abandonment. It can make them feel exposed or emotionally fragile. When emotional vulnerability becomes too intense, they may unconsciously seek escape. Cheating becomes a coping mechanism, not a deliberate act of cruelty. It becomes a way to avoid confronting emotions they don't have the tools to navigate. Unresolved trauma affects more than just how a woman behaves. It affects how she interprets love. If she grew up in an environment where affection was inconsistent, where love was unpredictable, or where safety was fragile, she may associate emotional closeness with eventual pain. This makes her instinctively pull back when a relationship becomes too stable. A good man providing consistency may unintentionally trigger her deepest fears. Instead of feeling safe, she may feel pressure. Pressure to trust, to open up, to allow herself to be vulnerable. The other man, however, often represents a temporary escape from this emotional discomfort. There are no expectations, no vulnerability required, no depth that scares her. He is simply a distraction from her own emotional chaos. Self-sabotage is another psychological mechanism tied to unresolved trauma. When a woman doesn't believe she deserves good love, she may unconsciously destroy it. She may cheat to confirm her internal belief that she is unworthy, flawed, or destined for emotional instability. The act of cheating creates the very chaos she subconsciously expects. It becomes a twisted form of emotional familiarity. She doesn't cheat because she is unhappy with the good man. She cheats because her internal wounds tell her something this healthy can't last, something this stable isn't real, something this good won't stay. Sabotaging the relationship becomes an attempt to control the hurt before the hurt controls her. Insecurity also plays a major role. Women with deep-seated insecurity often rely on external validation to feel emotionally balanced. Even when they have a good man who loves them, their insecurity whispers that his love isn't enough, that he will eventually leave, or that he only loves the version of her he sees, not the one she hides. When someone else pays attention, compliments her, or shows interest, she momentarily feels more secure. It becomes a temporary bandage over a long-term wound. She confuses attention with acceptance, mistaking the validation of another man as proof of her worth. This psychological pattern can lead her into emotional or physical cheating, even though the problem lies within her, not within the relationship. Unhealed emotional wounds often create fear. Fear of intimacy, fear of abandonment, fear of rejection. These fears shape her responses. For example, a woman who fears abandonment may cheat preemptively, believing that hurting the good man first protects her from being hurt later. A woman who fears rejection may seek reassurance from another man to avoid feeling vulnerable with her partner. A woman who fears emotional intimacy may run towards someone who requires nothing meaningful from her. In every case, cheating becomes a shield, a defense mechanism, a flawed strategy for avoiding emotional pain. Many men assume cheating always reflects something lacking in the relationship. But for women with unresolved trauma, the relationship can be healthy, stable, and loving, and still trigger emotional confusion. A good man provides emotional consistency, but unresolved trauma thrives on emotional unpredictability. A stable love may feel foreign to her, almost unreal. She may not know how to receive it, trust it, or embrace it. And because her past taught her that love is conditional, painful, or temporary, she may expect the relationship to fall apart. Rather than waiting for the good man to leave, she may sabotage the connection herself. Cheating becomes a way to maintain control over an outcome she believes is inevitable. Another psychological factor is attachment style. Women with anxious or avoidant attachment patterns often struggle with regulating emotional closeness. Anxious individuals fear abandonment and seek constant reassurance, while avoidant individuals fear intimacy and pull away when things get too close. Both patterns can lead to cheating. An anxious woman may cheat when she feels emotionally insecure or when she mistakes attention for affection. An avoidant woman may cheat to maintain emotional distance from a good man, using infidelity as a barrier against vulnerability. These patterns are not conscious choices. They are emotional reflexes rooted in childhood or past relationships. A woman with unhealed trauma may also project past pain onto the current relationship. If she has been betrayed, abandoned, or mistreated before, she may assume it will happen again. She may not trust the good man fully, not because of his actions, but because her mind is conditioned to expect disappointment. If she feels a moment of emotional distance, she may assume it's the beginning of abandonment. Instead of confronting her fears, she may run into the arms of someone who poses no emotional threat. The cheating becomes a way to manage her internal narrative, not a reflection of the good man's behavior. All of these psychological dynamics point to one conclusion. Many women cheat not because the good man lacks something, but because she carries emotional wounds that distort how she sees love, connection, and intimacy. Her betrayal is rooted in her pain, not his worth. When a woman cheats on a good man, people often jump to shallow explanations: temptation, attention, opportunity, or emotional immaturity. But beneath the surface, there is a deeper, more complex psychological layer that many men never see coming. One of the most powerful yet least discussed reasons behind infidelity is the internal emotional turbulence she carries. Old wounds, past fears, and unresolved insecurities that quietly shape her behavior far more than she realizes. Cheating is often not about the man she betrayed, but the emotional chaos she never healed within herself. And understanding this truth doesn't excuse the betrayal, but it exposes the unseen battles that often lead up to it. Many women grow up experiencing emotional neglect, inconsistent affection, or unstable relationships long before they ever enter adulthood. These early patterns carve deep emotional grooves in the mind, grooves that whisper, love is temporary, people leave, or you're only valued when someone wants you. So when she enters a healthy relationship with a good man, instead of feeling secure, these old wounds can become triggered in ways that feel overwhelming. A good man may offer stability, consistency, and genuine care, but if her inner world was shaped around chaos, inconsistency, or conditional love, she may not fully know how to sit in the quiet safety of something real. She might sabotage it, doubt it, or test it. Some women cheat not because the good man was lacking, but because stability feels foreign to someone who only knew survival, not emotional peace. Another internal struggle comes from identity confusion. Many women spend years defining themselves through relationships, being wanted, being chosen, being admired. These experiences become emotional mirrors that shape how they see themselves. When those mirrors disappear, they can feel an unsettling emptiness. In this state, validation becomes a drug, and attention becomes a temporary bandage. Even in a good relationship, she may subconsciously crave the high of new admiration, not because she wants another man, but because she wants to feel something that fills the quiet gaps inside her. A good man's steady love is powerful, but when a woman has been wired to chase intensity rather than stability, she may find herself drifting towards situations that recreate old emotional patterns, even harmful ones. Infidelity becomes a way to avoid confronting these deeper wounds, a way to feel temporarily alive, important, or desired without facing the emptiness underneath. Internal conflict also arises from the fear of emotional vulnerability. Many women fear being truly seen. They fear opening up their deepest wounds, fears, and insecurities because vulnerability feels dangerous. So even when a good man offers emotional safety, she may resist it. She may keep parts of herself hidden. She may avoid deep conversations. She may fear disappointing him or appearing weak. For some, cheating becomes a distorted form of control. Instead of allowing herself to fully depend on one person, she keeps emotional distance through secrecy. She convinces herself that she's protecting her heart when in reality, she's avoiding emotional intimacy that feels too heavy or too unfamiliar. Cheating, in this context, becomes a defense mechanism, a way to escape the discomfort of being deeply known. Another psychological factor is unresolved trauma. Women who carry unhealed trauma, whether from childhood, past relationships, or life experiences, often develop distorted coping mechanisms. Trauma can create emotional numbness, impulsiveness, or attachment instability. When these internal wounds remain untreated, they can erupt in destructive behaviors. To a good man, it feels confusing. He gives love, loyalty, and effort, yet receives betrayal. But in her mind, the cheating wasn't about him at all. It was a manifestation of her own internal pain, triggered by emotional patterns she didn't understand or know how to control. Trauma clouds judgment. It creates impulsive decisions. It makes temporary emotional relief feel urgent and necessary. And cheating becomes not a deliberate attack, but a desperate escape from feelings she has no idea how to handle. Another internal struggle that fuels infidelity is emotional numbness. Some women enter relationships already emotionally shut down. They may not feel deeply connected, not because of the man, but because they lost touch with their own emotions long ago. When a good man offers love, she may appreciate it logically, but struggle to feel it deeply. She might smile, respond, and participate, but internally, there's a sense of disconnect. This emotional numbness can create a craving for stimulation, intensity, or something that shakes her out of the emotional dead zone she's been living in. Cheating becomes less about desire and more about trying to feel something, anything, even if it's wrong. It's not that she didn't value her partner, it's that she didn't know how to feel the value of what she had because she wasn't emotionally present within herself. Lastly, there is the psychological pull of unresolved self-worth issues. When a woman's self-worth is weak, she may believe she doesn't deserve a good man. She may feel guilty receiving love she never learned to accept. She may feel like an imposter in her own relationship. And instead of rising to meet the love she's given, she may destroy it because it contradicts her internal beliefs. Self-sabotage is a common pattern for people who feel unworthy of good things. And in relationships, it often manifests as pushing away the very person who genuinely cares. A good man becomes a mirror, reflecting back her worth, her value, and her potential. But if her internal mirror is cracked, that reflection feels uncomfortable. Cheating becomes a way to shatter the connection before it exposes her deeper insecurities. She convinces herself she can't live up to his love, so she breaks the bond before he discovers her flaws, fears, or emotional fractures. All of these internal emotional battles create a storm inside a woman that the outside world never sees. To the man she betrayed, it feels personal, intentional, and deeply painful. But to her, the actions came from confusion, fear, emotional chaos, and wounds she didn't understand how to carry.